the migration definition. Okay, what are the definition, and we'll go for the prerequisites. Yeah, the same thing. See, yesterday we discussed, right? Side by side upgrade. At that time, what we mentioned, moving the database from one server to another server, right? The same thing in the side by side migration. We used the migration terminology, right? So here in SQL Server, migration refers to the process of moving a database or components from one server instance or platform to another. So here the components are a database. So database means like our this database. This is the database. And components means linked servers and logins, jobs, SSH packages. Those will come under the components. That comes to like a objects. So the migration refers to the process of moving a database or its a components from one server instance or platform to another. This can involve moving a database to newer version of the SQL server or a different server or even cloud-based service like Azure database. So here the moving the database means like one server to another server. That may be same SQL server version, or maybe same SQL server edition, or maybe a lower to higher environment. That may be version, or that may be edition. The main is moving the data from one environment to another environment. Moving the data means like databases. So what are the pre-migration steps? So pre-migration steps, the involve, let me go for the diagram, then we'll go for the things. So this is my old server. This is my newer server. I want to move the database from one server to another server. Before moving, what are the prerequisites I need to check? So post prerequisites, the what are the server I'm going to keep it or holding. That server is eligible, like having sufficient resources. Resources means like resources means like resources means like CPU. Resources means like CPU, that called cores. One more memory, that called like RAM, and one more is storage like a disk. So before moving the databases, we need to check the new server able to are capable to hold that particular database. So here the whole server having 8 cores with 128 GB RAM. So for that, newer server should be equivalent or little bit low. Not, there is no like mandatory to maintain the same hardware like a CPU and cores. So the physical servers generally we can provide the more cores, but coming to the virtual machine, no need to keep as it is. Why? Because in the virtual machine, if you want to bump up the resource, that will go for a fly it. Like it will take a longer time. But if you want to change any hardware configurations in the physical machines, that will take longer time. Why? Because the physical machines are adding the disk, adding the CPU, adding the RAM. That will different procedure that will take a longer time. Coming to the virtual machine, the process is adding the CPU, memory, and the storage. It will it won't take much time. That is a simple process. And also the compared to the physical hardware or virtual machines are giving the better performance. So that is the reason there is no thumb rule to maintain the same CPU and RAM in the newer server, but we have to check the CPU memory utilization from the older server, how much it is taking and how much utilizing, and we have to give same or equivalent to the that CPU and memory. But the storage should be same. Suppose why? Because if you have the 4 TB and moving the new server should be having the same amount of the storage. The storage should be same, but the memory and the CPU there is no thumb rule to maintain the equal. Why? Because here the core model we call like a V core model, but in the physical servers we can see like a core model, the hardware and the dedicated for the physical machines to that same machine. But virtual machine that will be shared across the like a there is a separate process. The hardware will be divided, and one hardware will be given to the one computer. That that will give the better performance as well. So the thing is like one prerequisite is we need to check CPU, memory, and storage. We are able to hold that data or not. That is the main prerequisites. Let me go for the Google what they mentioned. Yeah. So they're what they're telling. Uh, Instead of that, first they're telling we need to plan right. So I want to move the database from one server to another server. If I'm moving the data to one server to another server, the first important is this: we need to identify the dependencies. Dependency means like if I move the database, this particular database, this particular database, this particular database, what are the applications are connecting, and from where which are the reports and which are the areas data is connecting to the this particular database, and what are the users are connecting, and what are the data is pulling. Sometimes the data will be coming from the one application or multiple application, or maybe the data will be coming from the other server as well for the cross functionalities. So for that we need to identify the dependencies. So for identifying the dependencies, 80% the application team will knows, because they knows the designing where the data is coming to the this particular database. So we need to identify the dependency. So here identify the scope of the migration, including the database and application and dependencies. So we need to identify what are the databases we need to move, and what are the applications we need to move, and what are the dependencies we have for that particular database. And resource access the source and target environments, compatibility, performance, and resource requirements. So what is that exact means? That like we have the access for the source server and target server. Why? Because we want to perform the certain activities, right? So that is the reason we must have access for the source server and target server, and we need to check the performance for the older server. What is the performance for the last 30 days? And we need to allocate the same resource to the target. So determine the migration strategy. So how we want to move the data from one server to another server? Like what are the approach we are going to use? So do you remember like last classes we discussed it? Detach and attach, backup and restore, and backpack, and taking the script out, and other areas, right? And we need to determine what is the approach we are using for moving the databases. So this is the kind of a prerequisites or planning for the migration. So pre-migration steps, this is the very important, and we need to identify the scope of the migration and dependencies, and we need to identify the source and target environment access, and we need to check the compatibility. Why? Because I'm moving the data from one server to another server. So for that server is compatibility or not. So that operating system is compatibility or SQL server is compatibility. The hardware and disks are compatibility or not. We need to consider. And like a strategy, backup and restore, detach and attach, and log shipping. So when we discussing about the log shipping, right? So generally people are log shipping is the one of the high availability, but nowadays no one is using, but the people are using for the migration process, right? So the log shipping is very important for the migration purpose. So recently, like there is a tool called SSMA and DMSA tool. This tool will help for the migrating the database from on-prem to Azure environment. But if you're going for the from the moving the database, like migrating from VM to VM, the best approach is backup and restore or log shipping. Okay, don't go for detaching, attaching. If you go for detaching, attaching, it's kind of like a complete downtime. So we are using for migration, backup and restore or log shipping. And also we have a one methodology recently we are using, always an availability group, but that is required lot of hardware and lot of technical and other dependencies. And pre-migration steps and plan for downtime and rollback for procedure. So here, if I want to go for backup and restore, how long it will take to moving the data from one environment to another environment? How long it will take? Why? Because while moving the data, we need to stop the application and we need to move the data, right? So that time entire data will be operations will be down, right? So for that we need to check the downtime and the rollback procedure. Suppose if I move the data, but after moving the data, few of the functionality is not working. So that time, what we need to do? We have to go for rollback procedure, right? So that is the reason we have to identify what is the how much downtime and what is the rollback procedure. So here the pre-migration steps, we need to check the all the things and we need to prepare the job plan. In the job plan, we have to go for step-by-step process and how to log in the server, how to take the backup and how to move the backup to other environment, how to restore and how to move the logins and how to fix the ARP users and how to bring the database online. Like a step-by-step process. Like initially, who is going to initiate the process? Application will stop the application, then they will hand out to the database. Once the application is stopped, we need to take the backup. Then the kind of the step by step we need to maintain. So in that pre-migration steps, the pre-migration steps, we will arrange a call and we can discuss with the entire required team. That will be business, like a business application owners and the development team and the database team and the SMEs. So we'll go for the call. We can discuss the migration steps. So and later, then we can uh, prepare the migration steps or implementation. So pre-migration steps is a very important. Why? Because before moving the data, we need to check the all the areas to provide the better performance, better availability, and lower downtime while moving the data. Now, preparation of the source environment. So the source environment, see here, yeah, in the source environment, uh, the first thing is like we need to check like yesterday we discussed right one thing while going for in place upgrade. What I mentioned before in place upgrade, we need to check the integrity, a database consistency. So here moving the data from one environment to another environment, the first thing is like we need to check the database integrity. Suppose like I'm taking the one product from one company to another company. So kind of the thing is like if you go to the market, okay, if you're trying to buy the one apple, so if the apple is good, we can while buying the apple itself, before bringing the apple from the shop to our home, the first thing is like we need to check that apple. is good or not. In that we can check in the uh, shop only. Like once you bring the apple to the our environment, the people shop wonder what they will do while taking the item that is good in the their shop. But once we take into the our home, that is damaged. So that is the reason. Like here also we can take like our database should be health there is no consistency errors, there is no corruption. Like what is that means, like what are the database having in the source database, that may having some rows are corrupted, also maybe some pairs are corrupted, that will have some inconsistency. So before moving the data, we have to make sure that a particular database will have in proper state. So for that, every environment will use the checkdb. So before moving the data, we need to check that checkdb, run it. If everything is good, that is okay. But if they having any consistency, then what we need to do, we have to remove the that particular data. So that is the reason they have to agree. If you're not moving, what will happen? That will damage will go for increasing. Kind of like a best example, sugar or cancer. If you see any problem initially, we have to remove that area. Otherwise, it will keep on increasing. That will cause like a uh, death, right? The same kind of the thing. If you have seen any corruption, we have to take rectify the corruption. Otherwise, it will damage the database. So the damage we have to identify and we have to rectify their environment. So that is important for the consistency. We have to check it. So for that, we need to run the checkdb, or else we need to check the their checkdb history from the last week. So every environment checkdb will run on the weekly based. So this is the very important. And this is the preparation of the source server. And we need to check what is the database size, and is there any linked servers we have, how many jobs we have, and what are the sometimes what they will tell the customer requirement access to the that environment. So that the time we need to check the what are the permissions we have. All these things we need to document. So preparation of the target environment, and the target environment, we may already having the new server, or else we need to install the new server with the new platform. New platform is like a new operating system, like a new computer. In that we will have the sufficient physical disk and required network bandwidth and other things. The thing is like uh, before migration yesterday, like what I mentioned, side by side, we can move the logins and the jobs, firewall settings and connectivity. We can move one day prior to the actual cutover, right? So we have to identify the logins and users and permissions and jobs. We can move one day prior to the our actual migration and cutover. And also the we have to check the network settings and firewalls. We have to do pre only in our environment. So here, and in the migration, what we can do, we have to stop the application and we have to take the full backup, and the same full backup we can restore into the our environment. In the yesterday side by side migration, we showed, right. So uh, instead of taking the full backup and restoring the full backup in the actual cutover, that will give the huge downtime, right? So for that, what I mentioned, in the actual cutover, before one day prior, take the full backup and restoring that full backup into the our environment and keeping into the restoring state. In the actual cutover, take the differential backup and take the log backup in the source server, and we can restoring into the our target server, right. That will eliminate full backup, and that will eliminate restoring the full eliminate timing, and we can restore the database with minimal downtime. That will help to the buffer more time to the our application team. That is the migration process. So once we migrated the database, we need to perform the other uh, post checks. Why? Because we migrated the database. But the thing is like we migrated the from the 2016 to 2019 server. So 2016, our database will act the execution plan. Our database engine will behavior like a that kind of a business, like that kind of a software, kind of a environment. But we moved the database from 2016 to 2019. That may be customer environment to our environment, or maybe our environment to from old server to newer version. So that scenario, we have to change the database behavior. Why? Because the 2016, the database will behavior one kind of a uh, execution plan. Why? Because that is designed for the that particular software for 2016. If you move the database from 2016 to 2019, uh, initially the database will behave like a 2016. For that, we need to make the database to behave like a 2019. For that, we need to change the database compatibility level. So do you remember while installation we discussed, right? Compatible level, things like what is the compatibility level? That is the very important and a very key feature for better performance. So the compatible level is kind of like a feature in the database level that will provide the code or logic how the code has to execute and how the execution plan it has to retrieve from the database engine that will decide from the compatible level. Why? Because if I am sitting the my home, I will behave like a parent for my kids. I will behave like a wife, uh, husband for my wife. But if I go to my office, take another environment, I will behave like I will like a employee. I will like a lead database engineer. I will behave like a software. My behavior will change, right? So like that, we are moving the database from one environment to another environment. We have to change the behavior from the database level. So here in my home, I'm behaving like a one kind. But if I go into the office, I'm behaving from another behavior. That for that I need to change individually in myself. So like that, we have to change the database compatibly from the database level. That is the one thing we need to check compatibility level. So that is the one thing, and that compatible level also few scenarios we can give it to the from the higher environment. So suppose like I have a 2016 SQL server, then database compatible level is 13. If you go for 2019 database compatible level 150, but once you migrate the database from 2016 to 2019, the compatible level, what I mentioned, we need to change from 130 to 190. But once I change the compatible level 130 to 190, we can see some CPU spikes, some memory spike because of what are the code that is designed from the application team that is not suitable for the that particular 2019. So that time we can keep the compatible level same as older version. So that is a make sure the compatible level we need to check with the application team because the code and designing do from the application team. So we need to make sure what compatible level we need to change it. As per the DB team, we can recommend the compatible level the same as the SQL Server version. But that too depends upon the application design. But as per the migration process, we need to change the compatible level from as per the newer version server. So that is the one thing we need to check compatible level, and also the same thing we need to perform the check DP once we move the database from uh, one environment to another environment. We need to perform check DB. Why? Because their environment that is good, but check DB ran from the last week, but we did not run the check DB while moving the data, right? So we need to run the check DB once we migrate the data, and we need to uh, check the jobs are like before migration we moved all the jobs, but the jobs are disabled, right? So we need to enable the jobs, and we need to check the other functionalities, and we need to check error log, and we need to check event viewer if there any errors or not. So that is the one thing, and we need to run the rebuild index for the our new environment. Why? Because as I mentioned, if you want to get the better performance, and if you want to get the things right, we need to change the index behavior. So as of now, we migrated the like taken the database from one environment to another environment, right? So once we migrate the database, first thing is like change the compatibility level, then run the check DB, then run the rebuild index. Why? Because if you run the rebuild index, all our indexes will be rebuilt and it will update the stats. So the stats, it will provide the better execution plan and it will prepare the query plan. So we need to run the rebuild index, and also we need to run the update issues and the new environment. These are the pro for prerequisites, like post migration steps, and also we need to check the any ARPAN users. So here, what I mentioned before migration, what I mentioned yesterday, we shown the right moving the logins from one environment to another environment. What we did, we have run the SP rev login stored procedure, and we had taken the output. That output we executed on the newer server, right? That will take the logins and users with the permissions aligned with SID. That was we have taken 1 day prior. So, but we are in the actual cutover, that maybe new user will be added, new login will be created, right? So for that, we need to check the any ARPAN users there are not. So we need to fix the ARPAN users. So when we discussing the security, what is the login, what is the user, and what is the ARPAN users, right? So the ARPAN user is means the user without login called like a ARPAN users. ARPAN users we can see only for the SQL accounts, not for the Windows accounts. So that is a make sure we have to fix the all the logins, all the users, and we have to provide the accurate permissions. That is the kind of a migration process. So the migration means like we have to move the database from this server to this server while moving the what are the prerequisites, what are the procedure we are going to follow, right, and what are the steps we need to do. So if you refer the yesterday side by side migration, all the practical we covered. Like what we did, we had taken the backup and restoring into the another server. At that time, we kept the database in the restoring mode, and we have moved the logins and we moved the jobs. And the actual change window, what I mentioned, we had taken the differential backup and we have taken the log backups and we restoring into the another server, right? The same processor we have to follow the backup and restore. Then we have to go for deep. We need to run dbcc check db use. We need to check the db check db. What is that, miss? Spelling is wrong. CHACK. we need to run the db check db. Uh, it is going to the lab. It should not, lab is not there. So while running the CheckDB, what it will do? It will scan the all the objects. Objects means views, index, tables, and it will check the row by row and page by page. And is there any corruption or not? And it will provide the in the last final output zero consistency, zero allocation. So allocation means like the how the page is allocated extends. The consistency means there is no like a data corruption on the page level or row level. If you see zero allocation, zero consistency, that means our database is good state. If you see any like a kind of error, uh, something like one or two, then we have a problem with the problem. So when we discussed about the suspect state, right? So if you see more errors, database will go to suspect state. So that thing we need to check it. And as I mentioned, database compatible level, right? Where we need to check. Right click properties. If you go for options, in that we can see the compatibility level. If you drag it down, we can see the, so right now, yeah, so it is a 2019. Okay, so here if you go for our SQL server, select edit version version edit version, we can see 2022. And if you see the compatible level for model or MSD master SP underscore helpdb is 150. Here 150. No, see 160. Where is the master? Master is 160. But if you see my user database, I'm seeing like a 150. Still, it is behaving like a 2019. So if you see the if a real environment, any server, most of the times we can see the difference. The SQL server master model will be one compatibility, and the user database sometimes still we can see the 2008. Still we can see the 2012. Still we can see the 2014. If it is 2008, what is the compatible level? If it is 2012, what is the compatible level? Why? Because this compatible level, if you see the SQL server higher version also, but inside the database compatible level, we can see low environment. Why? Because what are the code written to the application that is supporting from the legacy code, like a .NET framework and some other code, right? That is written into the old code. So that is the reason compatible level, we need to check from the application. If they're okay, then we have to change it to the newer version. Otherwise, we need to keep it as the same. So here I changed it to 150. Even though my SQL server is running 2022 also, but inside the database will behave like a 2019 for the database level, not for the server level. The server level SQL server will behave like a 2022. But coming to the database will behave like a 2019. Why? Because my application compatible level for the 2019. So if you go here, database, options, uh, compatible level, if you go here, if you want to, I can change it to 2022. But if I don't want to change it, I can keep it as this. Like once you take the backup and restore, what will happen? It will take the exact copyright. What are the properties we have? If the database is full record, simple recorder model, it will come like a simple. If it's the compatible level, 2008 also, suppose if I take the database backup from the 2019, but the database compatible level like a 2014, it will come like a 2014. Why? Because it will take exact copy. So here we may need to keep as a 2014, or else we need to keep like a 2022. But these things we have to check with the application team. Okay, this is a very key topic or key keep like a key area. We need to check and we need to change it. So compatible level we need to change it. And one more thing is like, if you go for options, if you go for options, the most of the things we need to check the page verify. The page verify we have a two times like a here uh, see none, checksum and a torn page detection. So always go for checksum. So uh, a torn page detection. So this is the feature available on the 2000. From the 2000 onwards, the page level verify to the checksum. So just go and Google it. What is the difference between checksum and tone paste and none? From the 2000, we cannot see the option for checksum. We can see only tone paste detection. So these things we need to check it. If the value tone paste detection, we need to change the checksum. Checksum is the new feature in the page level verify for recovery purpose. So if you go to the database option, we have to verify the option as a checksum. So if you tell this answer, the interview may not ask, but they will ask what is the difference between checksum and tone paste detection. Let me Google it. That's better. Page uh, SQL Server database page verify and page torn page detection. So here, what is the purpose means like the database option defines the mechanism SQL Server used to verify the data consistency of the database. See, whenever the like what I mean to say, whenever we entering the data, the first will go to the log file. From there, it will go to the disk, right? So if it is log file or data disk, the but data will be go to the physical disk, right? So whenever they're doing the operations, it will check is there any corruption or other areas. So checksum is default and recommended. This is the most robust method. SQL Server calculates the checksum for the entire 8 KB. So the checksum will go for the entire page. What is the page size and default size rate? The page size is 8 KB rate. So it will check entire the page for the good or not. If you go for torn page detection, that is a legacy. So it's going for a bit. Uh, every written into the page, it will check the 512 bytes. So 512 bytes means like a very less rate. So 1024 into 8 KB, like 8060 bytes for the page. But instead of the page, it is going for the byte by byte. So like whenever the data is going on. But if you're going for the entire page checksum, that is good. If you're going for the page like a byte by byte, if any failures comes, the data will go for like a checksum and will return very slow, right? That time we can see the some like what I mean to say here checksum less through than the checksum. What is the checksum? Checksum is nothing but operations, right? It will flush the data between log file to disk, and it will maintain the consistency. So If I'm checking the data, good or bad, in the writing to the disk with row by row with limited bytes, that will take a longer time, right? So while sending the data, if I see any failure, then data will be corrupted, right? Instead of that, if I take the 8 KB, if I verify it, then process will be very fast, right? So that is the reason it will verify when the recovery process. So the page verify will verify in the recovery process, and we can recommend it. Checksum is the default and recommended. Torn page detection is the legacy. We can see in the 2000 SQL server. So that is the reason we have to change the option as a checksum. And one more thing is like there is a one option auto close. So auto close we need to set as a false. If you set as a auto close as a true, what will happen? Whenever the huge operations are performed, whenever the transactions are as a performed as a bulk, what will happen? The database will feel like a stress. That time, what it will do? It will hold the database and it will keep the database in the pending recovery state. If you go for pending recovery state, what it will do? Do you remember when we discussing the recovery pages? Copy paste, redo page, and undo page, right? So the same thing, what it will do? It will hold the database and it will keep the database to pending recovery and it will push the all the complete transaction. Once everything is done, it will keep the database into the online state. So that's a very high risky. Why? Because database will go to pending recovery and users won't connect. So that is the reason auto close we have to keep as a false. If you keep as a true, every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or maybe based upon the bulk load, based upon the data load, database will go to pending recovery state. So that is the reason we auto close, we need to check it and we need to change as a true option. So here some legacy application, legacy compatible level, the application design like a auto close as a false, as a true. Why? Because whenever the use operations to reduce the load or some other things to get the stress, like a breathe. Database will go for all state. Once everything is recovered, then we'll put it into the online. But it's a very risk for the operational database. So we have to change the auto close as a false option. This is the post steps for the migration steps, like a compatible level, run the check DB, run the rebuild indexes, and fix the ARP errors, and check the job functionalities, uh, and check the error log. This is the post migration steps. So pre migration steps and post migration steps, and what is the plan? This is the for the migration. So when we need to perform the migration, this is the very important. And as I mentioned, the every environment they will recruit the people because of the migrations. Why? Because they will take the business and they will taking their data to their environment. So that required they need migration people. That migration people may be Windows and networking and storage and a DB team. But nowadays there is no Windows, there is no storage, there is no network. All comes onto the Azure administrator and database team. So nowadays there is no database team also. Entire Azure administrator will maintain the migrations. Why? Because they will go for lift and shift, or maybe they will go for DMA tool. They can migrating. So that is the reason we need to understand the Windows, the storage, network concept if you want to work the Azure. So today this is for the concept for migration. So tomorrow we can connect at 7 a.m. and we can go for the replication. What I thought I will explain for the replication for adding the table, removing the table, but time is not allowing. But I will let you know if tomorrow we'll connect. I will ping advance in the like 8 p.m. Okay? If not, we can connect to Saturday. But try to will connect tomorrow. It won't take 30 minutes. We'll go for the replication. Okay, thank you all. I hope you understand. But this is the very important. The people will ask for this migration, and I also showed in the initial when we discussing about the Azure, right? Key topics while taking the backups. I took the backups to the local disk. I took the backup to the file share, backup of file share, and I took the backup to the Azure storage container. So if you want to eliminate the downtime for on-prem to Azure, we recommended to take the backup to the Azure storage container. So that will eliminate uploading and downloading. So the people will ask, how can you minimize the downtime? If you take the backup to the local disk and uploading and downloading to the our environment and restoring, that's kind of like a full load. Instead of that, take the backup to Azure storage container and restore it. These things I will again show for taking the backups to the Azure storage container. That part you have to utilize here. Okay. So I'm stopping here, but we have to go through the document, and I will provide the one document for the migration I prepared, and I will send you to go through it. And you have to get the more knowledge from the Google as well. Why? Because this is I used to follow my process, but some other environment they will move other process. But if you go for the Microsoft document, everyone has to follow the same document or at least that white paper document. Okay, that is for the migration. Let me stop the recording and let me we can close the session today.